Hi, good evening. This is Chris, and we are going to start our second project. And this is really for beginners. So, welcome. Tonight we have a special audience, apart from our online guests. My 6-year-old decided to join us tonight. I know most of you might want to see her beautiful face, but it's a bit tricky for me to be moving the camera around, just for us to say hello to you with our faces in the camera. And as you know, if you've watched our videos, it's quite low tech. So can you say hello, Stephanie?
Hello.
All right. If you're online, if you're joining us, it would be great for us to see your comment, just to say hello. Anyway, tonight we are going to be talking about, or we're going to go about making these Yorkshire cowl. Um, I did not make this pattern. This is by Lion Brand. And hi, Elaine. And you can find the free pattern in the description. So, since this is the first of the series, I want to talk about a few things. And normally it takes us a few videos to complete the project. Oh, wow, that's bright. Should have adjusted the. I did adjust the camera. All right. So apologies for the brightness. So today we are going to focus on the gauge swatch. What is this? Essentially, if you have a given crochet hook size and thickness of yarn, you will end up with a certain size of a piece. Okay. Um, Even though you're recommended a certain size for both items, it also depends on how you hold your hook and your yarn. If you crochet tightly or if you crochet loosely, it will all result in either a very small piece or a very large piece. All right. So that's the main reason why this is important. Now, I have made projects wherein I didn't really care to make a gauge swatch. I ended up with a hat that was too big, so I made it into a bag. I've also made a dress for my daughter, and I had to rework it so many times that it took me probably a month more than how much I intended to spend time on it. So essentially, it is important because if you want a piece to be a certain size, then you have to make this gauge swatch. What is a gauge swatch? Essentially, you want you crochet a piece that would look something like this square piece of paper. And this square piece of paper is 10 centimeters or 4 inches per length or per side. All right. Now, we're also going to talk about how are we going to adjust depending on the gauge swatch that you just made. If it's too small, what do we do? If it's too big, what do we do? And then we are also going to talk about how are we going to make the double crochet stitch. Again, just to remind you that we're using US terms. For our gauge, we are going to be using the gauge swatch of 9 double crochet by 6 rows. So we want to be able to fit our swatch within this square. I just made this myself. I normally don't have this, but just for illustration purposes, I just got a piece of paper uh, with the dimension of 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters or 4 inches by 4 inches. My recommended hook size for the project is 8 millimeters. If you have a different size hook, that's fine for tonight. The thickness of the yarn that I'm using is chunky or bulky. If you have a thicker yarn or thinner yarn, then just we'll just do the project for this particular video with whatever materials you have right now. Okay, so What are we going to do tonight? We're going to make the gauge swatch using a double crochet stitch. Okay. As with everything, we start with chain stitches. So if you have not done any crocheting, I would suggest that you go back to the first project that we made, and we talked about the chain stitch, right? So remember how to make the loop. And I do it differently. It's just that it's a personal preference for it. Okay, all right. So I just made a knot like that, a slip knot. And then our gauge swatch that I'm using is consisting of 9 double crochet stitches for every row. So I'm going to make 9 chains. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Since we're going to be using a double crochet stitch, this is different from a single crochet stitch. Our turning chain is not one single chain. Okay, some people use 3 chains as a turning chain. Some people use 2 chains as their turning chain. Personally, I prefer 2 chains as my turning chain. So in your initial 9 chains, I want you to add either 2 or 3 chains. But for today, let's just make it 2 chains. So 1 and 2. All right. From this, you're going to skip the first 2 chains that we just made, and we are going to make the first stitch on the 3rd chain. So skip the first and skip the second. And we are going to make our first double crochet stitch. There is 8 steps to a double crochet stitch. The first one is, as you guessed it, or maybe you might not guess it, is a yarn over. You yarn over, and then you insert your hook inside the next stitch. It isn't the first or the second, it is the 3rd one. Okay, so it's the first 2 steps. And then you yarn over again. And then you draw through 1 loop. Yarn over again. Draw through 2 loops. Yarn over. Draw through the last 2 loops. So this is our first double crochet stitch. So let's go back to the steps. So for double crochet stitch, again, there's 8 steps. I apologize for the brightness of this. I did adjust this, but apparently it's not enough. So 8 steps. Yarn over, insert your hook in the next stitch. Yarn over, pull through 1 loop. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Now some people, they actually count this yarn over and pulling through as if it's 1 step. So if you want to be like, oh, it's not really 8 steps, it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just 5 steps. So yarn over, insert hook. Yarn over, pull, yarn over, pull, yarn over, pull. So there's 3 sets of yarn over, pull. Only that the first pulling is only through 1 loop, and the last 2 pulling is through 2 loops. Okay, all right. So let's do it again. So yarn over, insert your hook in the next stitch. Yarn over, pull through 1 loop. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops. So this is your double crochet stitch. Let's do it again. Yarn over, insert your hook in the next stitch. Yarn over, pull through the first loop. Yarn over, pull through the second, or rather the 2 loops. Yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. So how many double crochet stitches have we made? 1, 2, and 3. And we need 9. Okay, let's make the 4th double crochet stitch. Yarn over, insert hook into the next stitch. Yarn over, pull through 1 loop. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops. That's double crochet number 4. Let's go for number 5. Yarn over, insert hook, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And then you just keep going, okay? Yarn over, insert through the next stitch. Yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Okay, so just keep doing that until you should be able to get 9 double crochet stitches. If it's not 9, if it's less than 9, then you have to repeat it. If it's more than 9, then you should just keep going. Actually, the more stitches you have, the better. Okay, I seem to have lost it. Okay. All right, at this stage, I would suggest that you get your stitch markers, okay? So you know where to switch over. If you remember that we used 2 stitch markers so that we know where we're going to switch over for our project. Okay. Probably here I'm getting mine right now. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Okay, so you should have 9 or more. If not, you have to repeat the whole process again. Okay. So make sure you have 9 plus 2 or 9 plus 3 chains, and then you make 9 double crochet stitches. Okay, so where's my first stitch? So that should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's my first stitch. Okay. All right, so again, we make another row. Now, if you happen to have, let's say, 8, and if you can sort of like cheat, you could actually cheat, just make another double crochet here. But instead of making 6 rows, I would recommend you make 7 rows, so you don't count the first row. Okay. All right. For again, turning chain would be 2 chains because we're using double crochet. So we will make our first double crochet stitch for the second row. So yarn over, insert hook, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. So this is our first double crochet stitch for our next row. Remember to put in your stitch marker for that one. Okay, so I'll repeat the instructions as slowly as I can, okay, just in case you cannot follow. So you yarn over, and then you insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over again, pull through that stitch you just inserted through, yarn over, and then you pull through 2 loops, yarn over, and then you pull through the last 2 loops. Okay, so that's your second double crochet. So you just keep doing this until you complete that row. Okay, and I want you to make 6 rows of double crochet. Okay, at this point in this video, because this is live, we probably won't have time to complete all of them. Okay, so let me see. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I want to explain what happens now. Let's say if you already made your swatch, so this should look something like this square. Okay. All right. Now I had thought when I started crocheting a few years ago that if I just made a few rows, that's enough. It's actually not, because your piece is actually going to grow a little bit. So it's not enough for you to just make, let's say, 2 rows if they ask you to make 6 rows. Okay, that shape is going to change because the more you make, the stitches here are going to be affected by the following rows. Now, if your piece is exactly the same as the square, then you're okay. Now, if the piece, okay, if the piece is within this width, that only means that I think the tightness of your stitch is a tiny bit off. Now, if you're just 1 row a bit more, okay, actually that's still a problem. Okay, but normally what happens is you're either too big both ways. Okay, so let's talk about that. If your piece is bigger than this standard 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, then that means that your hook size is too big. So you go 0.5 millimeters down. Now, most crochet hooks go from 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. So let's say 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5. Yeah. So let's say I'm using 8 millimeters. I don't know if there's a 7.5. So you just go down by 7. Okay. Or you go down to 7 millimeters. Now, if your piece is too small, that means your crochet hook is too small. Makes sense, yeah? So you just increase the size. Now, it's not enough that you go, oh, my piece is too small, I'll just go 1 up. And then you start making your project. No, you have to make another swatch. And then you check again. Yeah? Now, there will be times wherein you cannot get the exact swatch. Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's possible that you can get the exact width, but not the exact height. Okay. That's something to do with the tightness of your crocheting. It's either you're doing it too tightly or doing it too loosely. Okay. So you need to work on that. Now, another way to adjust it is by adjusting the thickness of your yarn. Okay. Now, I really doubt that works, especially if a pattern calls for a specific thickness of yarn or weight of yarn. Now, this is not the only solution for all crochet projects. In fact, there are many solutions to this. So these are just standard solutions to if your piece or if your swatch is not the same as the standard size. There have been times wherein I know that the yarn size and my hook size is nowhere near the recommended size. So I would adjust the pattern myself, but that's a more advanced solution. So for example, I found the yarn in a shop. I think it's very beautiful, but I know the thickness is about half the thickness of the recommended size. And I want to make a hat, a specific pattern of hat using this specific yarn that I just bought. So what I would do is I would try to make the hat, adjust it, and it would take me days to finally get the perfect hat size. It might be that instead of using 10 rows, maybe I need to use 15 rows of 1.5 the number of double crochet stitches, So I would need to adjust the pattern, but that's a more advanced solution to that one. All right, so this is what we're concentrating for this week. Okay, so your homework is to make the swatch, and I want you to be able to get to a piece that is 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters or 4 inches by 4 inches. Okay. The recommended size for the original pattern, I think, is actually, I think 9 or is it 12 millimeters? It's quite big. And I think the yarn size that they're using is super chunky or super bulky. But I was able to make a number of these cowls, okay, using 8 millimeters crochet hook size and chunky wool or bulky wool. Now, the final dimensions of your cowl is actually written on in the pattern, okay? Ultimately, if you're making this for yourself, all you have to do is after you make the piece, you put it on and see if it fits. Yeah, simple enough. But if you're making something for someone else with this different dimensions, then of course you have to, make the piece depending on their dimensions. Because I'm selling things online, and let's say I'm making this to sell, everything has to be uniform. It cannot be that this piece is bigger than the next one. Okay, I have to be consistent. Yeah. Okay. So those are different tricks on how to adjust your project, or let's say the hook size and your thickness of your yarn. Okay. So this particular one is about is actually the exact size of the recommended cowl in the original pattern, given that I am using a thinner yarn and a smaller hook size. Okay. Are there any questions? Stephanie, do you have any questions? She doesn't have any questions. Okay. All right. Now, that's your homework. I want you to make a piece like this, a gauge swatch. Okay, and I want it to be within 4 inches by 4 inches, as I said. If you have any questions, please ask. Now, next week, I will either have to adjust the day on when we're going to have our live stream, because it's my daughter's school holidays. Okay, so where we're living here in South Yorkshire, most of the schools are out on holiday starting tomorrow. Any questions? None? Okay, before I say goodbye, I'll just give you a sneak peek, or just a rundown on what this pattern is about. So essentially, for the cowl itself, we're working on the round. It's one complete round. Okay. You start off with a chain stitch. Okay. And then the next row is a single stitch. The following row is a double crochet stitch. And then it alternates single crochet, double crochet, single, double, single, double, single, double. Yeah, so that's the pattern. That's it. Now, the original pattern doesn't actually tell you need to make 5 rows of double crochet and single crochet. It doesn't say that. What it says is your cowl should be this size lengthwise and this size widthwise. That's it. Very simple. So this is definitely a beginner's project. It allows you to practice the 2 stitches, the single crochet stitch and the double crochet stitch. All right, that's it. I'm looking forward to seeing your projects, essentially the project being your gauge swatch. And I think my homework is to teach my daughter how to make that swatch, because she could barely start the chain part of the gauge swatch, and looks like it's also her bedtime. Is that right, Stephanie? Oh, I think she's fallen asleep. All right. Bye-bye. Want to say goodbye?
Bye-bye.
All right. See you next week, ladies and gentlemen, if there's one gentleman here.